to the Trans Talk Hub podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa, alongside the co-host, Braxton.
Hello again, everybody.
And then as you can see, we have a couple guests here.
Yes, this is my lovely wife, Maddie, and this is one of my longtime friends, Cadyn. We go real way back, so excited to have them both today.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Glad to have both of you on.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I guess to start things off, we are going to be talking about dating, how dating is, I guess, as a trans person, also, we can get some views on the other end of things as well. I think it's a good conversation. I don't think a lot of people really talk about it as much. And it maybe a lot of people really focus on the negatives, but there is positives as well. And I think that we should go into that also because there's just too much negativity going around in the trans community as a whole anyway. So I think that we should talk about, some positives as well, but, the negatives do, of course, take a role. And I think it's going to be some good conversation on how to navigate those things as well.
Absolutely. I'm excited to give some insight on this side of things and kind of dive into this. I feel like it's a pretty hot topic. I get asked a lot of questions about it, so it'll be cool to have a comprehensive place to get a bunch of education on it. So it's gonna be a good one.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. First, let me give a little bit of context though. This is basically just like a video of this couple. I mean, you'll see that, this guy has kind of, been with both of these women, but regardless, I think that there's some good points made here in the dating side of things that I think we should maybe talk about. So I'll go ahead and play it here.
It meant so much to me that you have to be that person and show me that. And during this process, he's shown me stuff that no man has. You know what I mean?
Like what?
Most men, you have to ask them to do certain things.
Like what?
Like, for instance, even before we got together, he wasn't obligated to be a certain kind of way. But every time he saw me, he would have flowers. He would have, treat me like a woman, open the door for me, respect. Things that any woman could dream of, which is why.
What did guys treat you like before him?
Like a tranny.
Like a tranny?
A fantasy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can just tell. You can just feel a certain kind of way. Because there's situations where when you're at my point, they may not know that you're transgender, but the second that they do, I've never been turned down. It meant so much to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like it's very true though. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that once they know it becomes about something completely different and not who you are anymore. And so it is sad that is a pretty shared thing, a pretty common thing. But it's also really cool to know that there are people out there that are going to love you for who you are, regardless of if they know you're trans or not. And they still treat you the same, treat you like a woman, treat you like a man, whatever it is you want to be viewed as. And I think that the unique perspective from being trans is that it makes it, I would argue being trans almost makes it easier to find your person, a person that's right for you, because there are so many people that are not right for a trans person. They're just not. So that's it. And I've never really thought about that before. But for some reason, when we were watching that, that's all I could think was that it's kind of a privilege almost. Like it definitely helps you find a person that actually loves you for you.
Yeah, and you definitely have those people that pursue you solely because you're trans too, which also makes things weird. Because it's like, I don't want you to just be with me for solely that. And not just men, but women as well, And that's always that makes me feel weird,
Yeah, I don't want to be this fantasy you're fulfilling. Like I'm looking for a life partner, not to be somebody's fantasy. Like that, those are two very, very different things. And honestly, a fantasy is just not what I am. Like I'm still a person. I'm not just this plaything for you to play with. So. But it is nice to know that, there are people out there that are the complete opposite of that. So,
Absolutely.
It's also interesting to hear, because I feel like a lot of the conversation is so much on trans women talking about chasers on the trans woman side, but it's interesting to hear that it's actually on both sides. It's just that on that end of the, like, the transition, it's just not talked about as much.
Right. Yeah.
I think that also comes from there is a side of the trans man community that doesn't mind that fetishization and they're cool with it and they profit off of it and stuff, and that's cool. It's just not something that I'm super into, and I know a lot of trans guys also aren't either. But there are some that do like that fetish, like to be fetishized and stuff, and that's cool. Like that's their thing. But
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting to know that, because I had no idea, like, before that. I thought that was only on the trans woman side of things with chasers and people, looking to fetishize and things like that. But I guess that's why we have these conversations, because maybe, I guess, anyone listening can now know that it's not just on the trans woman side of things.
I definitely think trans women have it a lot worse than we do. But
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely does run on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. Like I've had several experience, men and women, that are just that they just want to know what it's like, and that's cool. I get that, but that's just not. I don't think. I think a lot of trans people, the whole idea is blending in, assimilating, with society, and it's not being seen as this like this thing that's this anomaly, which we are. We can accept that that is the reality of it, but that's not. We're not trying to have that be the focal point of our life all the time. We're just trying to live our lives and kind of, yeah, be aware of that, but that can't weigh me down, kind of thing. And some people are cool with that. I'm not. I don't want to. I'm not into the chaser thing.
Yeah, me neither. I think also, like, and I could be wrong here, so definitely give me your feedback, but I definitely think that the more you do try to just blend in, the less of a chance that you are going to bump into somebody who is a chaser per se, because typically those exist within the community of where you are being open about being trans. If you just live your life and do your thing, you're probably going to run into people who genuinely figure out they like you. And then if they figure, when they find out you're trans or whatever, then they can kind of just figure out if they still want to pursue you. But I think genuine attraction happens at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and pull up the next little video here. This is like another video with Jesse, who was the guy that was in that TikTok. And he's actually they're doing like a lie detector test thing. And he was basically just like asking Cassidy, the girl he was with prior to the one you just seen, about does she actually view him as straight in the relationship, which is interesting to see.
Okay.
Do you look at me like I'm truly a straight male?
Yes.
You guys heard it. The internet heard it. Everyone heard it. Yes, I'm straight. And I date a trans girl.
Where?
I don't see one.
Where? They're cute. It's sad that they're not together anymore, but they were cute. That's cool though. Like I think that says a lot about how he made her feel and the way he treated her, because I feel like you would expect the answer to be no. I don't see that, like that would, for it to be a lie or whatever. So I think it says a lot that he's definitely like made her feel like a woman, which in turn has made her, able to view him as a straight man. And that's mostly what trans people are striving for, that sense of normalcy, right? So it's really cool. Like, I don't know much about this guy, but from the things I have seen, dude, top tier. Like, clearly he's making these trans women feel like women, and affirming them in a sense, and it's really neat to see that, especially in a dude, especially in a man. Like, that's just not. I feel like it's not as common.
Oh, it's definitely not as common, because they don't want to be like outspoken in the public. Like,
right.
Most men just want to be like, oh, cool, I'll be with you. Like, but when we go out, we'll just be very low key. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not very often that you hear somebody that public about, like, yeah, I'm dating a trans girl. What's up? Like, it's not a big thing, which is, it's great to see. I would love to see more men come out and be more vocal about that.
Yeah, it's good representation, and I'm hoping that him being who he is, he's a fit guy, and he's definitely like a dude's dude from appearance, anyways. Like I said, I don't know him, but I'm hoping that inspires more guys to get over that fear that's been placed on them by society, because everybody deserves to find their person if they so desire, and to get to live life with their person. Like, I mean, I can definitely speak for that. It's awesome. It's such a unique experience, and it's made me a much more positive person, and given me a lot of motivation, because I have another person to work for and all that, and I think everybody deserves to get to have that. So I'm hoping that this will open up the door for that to happen a little bit more.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm a little bit curious here, because I'd like to hear like everyone's point here about this. But we talked a little bit about sexuality because of that video. I think there's a lot of people, especially I've heard some within the trans community, where they're like, oh, well, if you're with someone who's trans, like, let's just, I'll speak from my end, but like on the trans woman end, if a guy's with us, then they're like bisexual,
right.
Because, the whole thing or whatever. But like for me, I think it breaks down to this. Like, if a guy was to get with me and he was with, like guys before he got with me as a trans woman, then you're clearly bisexual in my opinion. But
Right.
If you had never been with a guy before and then you get with me as a trans woman, you're straight.
Right.
That's my thought.
Yeah, because I mean, clearly it's an attraction to women, even if it's the femininity. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's, and not femininity in the way like a gay man that's feminine, right? There's a difference. And hadn't been with anybody like that prior to, so clearly that's not where the attraction lies. The attraction lies with the perception of a woman. And I think that's this whole conversation about sexuality is so interesting, because I do think a lot of it has to do with your perception as well, not just observation or biology, what we normally think that these things are tied to. There's also perception that ties into where your attraction comes from, and if you are perceived as a woman, I perceive this person as a woman, well, then there's a possibility for me to have an attraction. Like, so I think it's weird to try to tie it just to observation and biology, because it's not realistic.
And I think it also boils down to like what people prefer at the end of the day. Because I mean, I'm not going to name drop or anything, but there's a couple that I know that the wife is a cis woman, the husband's a trans man, and the wife still identifies as a lesbian. And her reasoning is because she's like, I fell in love with him before he came out, and I still chose to love him. But that doesn't change that if something ever happened to us, I would never, ever, ever date another man. And so a lot of people get angry at her for that, but it's like, he's cool with it, she's cool with it, who cares,
Right. I think that's a big part of it too, is like, at the end of the day, especially if it's like a couple, right? And these people, like, their sexuality doesn't even really matter because they've committed to one another, unless, you're in a different kind of arrangement, that's fine too. But, traditionally speaking, then it doesn't, like, I don't even know why that matters, what they identify as, but as long as those two people are cool with it, then why does it matter to you? Why does their label have to be something that you can understand? It doesn't even matter if you can understand it. There's no potential for anything between the two of you that would require an understanding of that. So
exactly. And it also boils down to, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like, if you're in a committed relationship, like, it doesn't matter what other people think about how you choose to define your sexuality and stuff. A lot of people get up in arms about people identifying as bisexual when they also date trans people, and it's like, well, I mean, okay, who cares?
Right. Yeah, exactly. What about you? You got any thoughts on it?
It's hard. I mean, I would consider myself bisexual solely because I've dated both women and men in my life. But I think a lot of that too comes down to like genital preference. Like, people have a genital preference, and that is a really scary term, and people are really scared of it, and like they act really high strung about it, but it has nothing to do with you personally. It has everything to do with, like, if a man only likes male genitalia, like, obviously he's not going to have a thing for me, and that has to be okay with me, because there's so many other people who do have a preference that would be me. So like, I just think that it's really silly to be worried about like what people identify as like sexual orientation wise or whatever, especially when you're in a relationship. Like, we joke about being eusexual. Like, I'm not
right. Right.
I don't really care. If you were to ask me what my sexuality was, I could tell you, but it really doesn't matter at this point because I don't intend on ever like practicing that or like applying that again. So hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
But I think that's silly to be upset about.
Yeah.
You know, like the one thing that upsets me is like the people who are out there and say like, oh well, if you won't date me because I'm trans, then you're transphobic. I hate that conversation.
Yeah,
I really hate it.
All audibly said,
I know. Yeah, I hate that conversation because it's like, you know, like genital preference, you know, that is a huge thing. Like nobody's transphobic because they won't date you. Like,
yeah, that's so silly. Like,
and you never know where a genital preference comes from either. Like that could come from trauma, that could come from you know being, it doesn't matter where it comes from, but you never know where it comes from. So like it's weird to call someone a piece of shit or, you know, transphobe or whatever just because they have a preference that doesn't include you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that also comes down to it's like, is it transphobic if like I get on Grindr and people are like, yo, I'm not interested? No, it's not. Because I disclose on when I was on apps like that, I'm not anymore, but you know, when I was on dating apps and stuff, I always had it disclosed because I don't want to mislead anybody. I want to be clear about what they're getting into. Right. You know, and if somebody told me they weren't into it, okay, fine, whatever, move on. It doesn't matter. But I think when it becomes transphobic is when they're like, you're ugly, and just like start like roasting on the fact that and being disgusted that I'm trans. Yeah, that's transphobic, but not being into me because of what genitals I have doesn't make you transphobic. I went on a date with a gay man, and he told me, he was straight up honest. He was like, look, I really like dick, so I don't think you can provide me what I need. And I said, fair enough. Thanks for the date. Have a nice day.
Yeah. And it's like, it's crazy that it just can't be that simple, you know?
Yeah.
Like, because like even as a trans person, I have preferences.
Absolutely.
You know? I'm not interested in being with another trans person. Does that? I mean, there's many things apparently that transphobic, you know, as we all know. But disclaimer: I'm not actually transphobic for anybody who doesn't know. It's just so that, you know, we're not confusing the masses out there. But you know, it's just crazy to say that. And honestly, why would you? It's such a weird thing to be upset about, because why would you even want to be with somebody or want someone to be with you that isn't interested in you? Right. Where's the fun in that? There's no connection at that point. It's just like, that's so, I don't know. It's like just searching for something to be upset about is what that feels like.
And when you go ahead,
be like me dating someone who didn't like colored hair or tattoos or piercings or whatever. Like I can't, you having a preference on the way that you want me to look or act or respond, like you want me to be a stay-at-home wife who pushes out kids, I can't do that for you. Like everybody has preferences in every aspect, so I just think it's funny that when it comes to that specific aspect, like I've been told before that I'm too short or I'm too ugly or I'm too fat or I'm too this or I'm too that. Like I've been told lots of things as a cis woman who, like, I'm seen by certain people as having it like easier in that realm, and it's really not. Like it's just as difficult, it's just as detrimental, it's just as toxic, because everybody has a preference and some people are nice about, you know, communicating those preferences and some people aren't. So it has nothing to do with being trans. It has everything to do with like people having preferences and them either being good people or bad people. Period. That's
absolutely. There we go.
Very well said.
Yeah, I think that's what it should boil down to, honestly. And I love how you like spoke about it from a different angle. That because I think the more the people who believe that it is transphobic maybe seeing it from that point of view, like the whole, you know, you don't like tattoos or you don't like colored hair or whatever, then you wouldn't like me. It's the same thing, and it's just it's not transphobic. But because we were talking about that kind of thing, I had to throw that out there because it irritates me when I hear people say that.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good topic. Very good topic, and very good points across the board. So I'm glad that we got that one in there.
That one could definitely be a tangent.
Oh yeah, easy, hours worth.
It definitely could be, but yeah, I had to throw it out there while it was on my mind. Especially because on this podcast we're very open, we're very raw on how we feel. So in just the whole dating thing, that is a conversation that's out there. So I'm glad we were able to, if at least from our end, put that to rest on why it's not. So I'm going to go ahead and share the next little video here, and then we'll get into some questions.
Let's go. Excited.
Jesse, can you give us one example of something that you withheld to tell Cassidy to protect her, even if she knows now?
So before her transition, she was somebody else. I saw this website one time of like who you were before that. And I know you would never show me the pictures of you before that, but I've actually like erased it out of my mind. I don't even remember what it looked like because I know how much it would have hurt you if you knew what I knew you looked like.
Jesse, can you give us...
Huh. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's a good thing though, because it's like, especially like, because some people could be, I don't know, it might could like affect the relationship or whatever. Because I don't know if it is for any of y'all, but I feel like for some people, like if somebody was like maybe asking about like if they never seen photos or whatever, and then they came across it like not looking for it or whatever, and was like, this is what you looked like or whatever, then that might really like put them in a mood or whatever. I think it's a good thing that he kind of hit it. I know some people will probably say like, oh well, maybe he should have just been like, hey, I seen it, by the way, not a big deal, like I don't see you any different or whatever. But in my mind, I kind of think it's a good thing that he did do that, because like, what if you bring on that question and it brings issues up,
Right. Yeah, I think that, I don't know, like for me now, at where I'm at, I don't really care if people see pictures of what I looked like before. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm, 10 years in, I've changed a lot. It's kind of impressive to look at old pictures, and it's always interesting to watch people go, holy shit, that's you? Like, yeah, bro, that's me. Like, I was a whole chick. It's crazy. So maybe it's just a difference in perspective. So for me, I don't think that like it's a big deal to see those, but he did like, he said like, I knew it would hurt you, so I don't know. I think I'm torn because I mean, from what I'm understanding, he saw the pictures, like he went and sought out old pictures and saw what she looked like. Do you know? We obviously didn't see it in the video, but do you know like what her response was to that, or how she felt about that? I'm curious to know if she was upset about it.
I didn't catch that side of it, but I mean, I would imagine that at least, I mean, it's hard to speak on somebody else's behalf, but
Sure.
at least for me, like I feel like I would be grateful. Like, yeah, thanks for not showing me. Well, the thing is too, is that I think it's nice that he said that like he kind of, once he's seen it, he put it in the back of his mind and forgot about it.
Yeah. That was precious, honestly. Like, it was really cute to see, like I was saying, like he's obviously very aware. He's like, I know that would hurt you, so I just pushed it away. Like, I don't even think about it. Like, I don't want you to think that I'm thinking something about it, so I'm just gonna get that out there in the open. Like, very like solid communication on that end. So yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely think it's a good thing. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to like what boundaries within the relationship too. Like, she obviously, that's something that she's uncomfortable with, and for me personally, I would be upset if my partner was like showing my old pictures to somebody else. But
Right.
like if I was, like I've shown her pictures of me, because it's funny to look back at. I was a MySpace kid, so, it's not something I share publicly now because I went from being an activist and being very open to now living stealth. So all of that, it's not hard to find, but I have pretty locked down most of my social media now because I do live stealth. So
right. Yeah, I guess it's just matter of perspective.
If I can speak to you from just like a woman's perspective, I think that touching back on it being bothersome to some people and not so much to others, like with two trans men speaking on the situation, like there's not really, I know that there is a separate level to that, considering that with being trans, like the whole goal is to like pass as well as you can and do all these things, but for men, the expectation is a lot lower than it is for women. Like, women are supposed to look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way, present themselves a certain way, offer something. Like, so I feel like we are expected, trans or not, to like be pretty and like bring this energy that men aren't necessarily expected to bring. So for trans women, I could understand that being like a lot more detrimental to see this version of yourself that like you had to work so incredibly hard, so much harder to achieve.
Yeah.
And now you're looking at, and now you know that this person that you love that's only ever known you as this present day person has seen that and has been, and you don't know how they feel. Like he might tell you one thing, but what if he's feeling something else? Like that just brings up something completely different. I mean, that could be like, I used to not look anything like I do now. So if you were to see pictures or, you know, listen to what people had to say about me at that point in time, like that could be really detrimental for my psyche, because I just don't want you to view me any differently, even though at that point in time I was still a cis woman. It's still like that same, I don't want you to think less of me, I don't want you to anything like that, because it's just a lot harder for women to present peacefully in this life and just go on peacefully because we're expected so much from. But
I can agree with that.
I could see why that was detrimental.
I didn't think about that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's like that didn't even cross my mind, and that's crazy because it's like we're really just like we're just dudes shit. We don't even think about that shit.
It's hard for us girls out here, man.
No.
Yeah, I definitely see that because like for me, like I scrubbed the internet like as best as I could. I mean, it's the internet, right? So there's probably there's definitely photos out there, I imagine. But for me, like, I mean, I'm still fairly new into transition. I just hit my year on hormones yesterday. So it's like,
happy birthday, Queen.
Thank you.
You're 1 year old today. That's so exciting.
But yeah, so it's like I'm still new into this, but like if I get into like dating or whatever, I don't actually want somebody to see the old me. You know, I do my best to hide it. But I don't think that I would be upset. Let's just say I met somebody, right? And we're, I don't know, year, 2 years into it, and we got a great relationship. And I don't know why it would come up, but if he's like, hey, I'm just, you know, like I was curious or whatever, like what you looked like before. If I already was established with this person, I might be more comfortable to like show that, you know?
Yeah.
But it like early on, I think also, and I don't know how this kind of translates on the other side of things, but like, I think Maddie, you spoke to it a bit, is that men have an expectation, you know, what a woman is, and so like as a trans woman, I feel like I am always trying to like meet that standard, and you know, I feel like it takes quite a lot to meet like a society standard of a woman, you know, which isn't always the greatest thing, you know, like you should, you know, just be yourself or whatever, but I think that with men and trying to date and things like that, if any of that did exist, it would, maybe they would view me differently and they would never really view me as a woman. And I think as a trans woman, I don't want to date someone who can never just see me as a woman.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
So I think now I kind of wanted to get into the questions here.
Cool.
And this kind of goes for either of you. Cause I just kind of want to go through like some positives and negatives about dating in general. And how like getting into a relationship was for both of you, and and like just how that was, and what would be some advice that you would give to, you know, just in general. It doesn't have to be trans related or not, but you know, like what are some challenges that you had? It could have been prior, could, you know, I mean, even in like no relationship is perfect, you know, so there's always ups and downs, but it's like, what are some challenges that you've had to overcome through everything?
Yeah. Cadyn, you want to start?
So I mean, I came out 10 years ago. I've been on hormones for 9. And before like coming out and everything, I had an interesting dating life. And it was funny because like before I came out, I dated a lot of straight women, which is now it makes sense. But back then I didn't. I was like, how am I pulling all the straight girls, you know? And when I came out, I was in a relationship, and she and I were together throughout my entire like my hormone journey and everything like that. And that was hard. And that was one thing that, like, if I could have done differently, I wouldn't have been in a relationship starting my transition, because at the end of it, we had a lot of issues, but one of the big ones is that she, even though I was out to her when we started dating, she felt like she lost me as my transition, like with my hormones and everything, started changing me, not just physically, but how I reacted to things and stuff like that. And so I don't think she ever recovered from that. I think she forever held on to who I was, and that was a hard pill for me to swallow and everything for a long time. So that would be my advice in that is, like, if you're in the beginnings of your transition, like, take that time to love yourself and focus on yourself and do what's right for you. And after her, I was like, I didn't think I was gay, but I was like, I'm bisexual. I'm going to try seeing what's out there. I dated trans men. And a trans man dating another trans man I felt like it was easier because we understood each other. We understand what we're going through. It makes things a little bit, easier in the bedroom as well. So I dated one trans man for a while, and then I was married to a trans man. And ultimately, like, those things didn't work out, and now I'm in a relationship with a cis woman. And, she and I, one of the positive things is this is the first relationship I've felt like I'm treated as just like her boyfriend. I'm not her trans boyfriend. I'm not her, we talk about how it is a queer relationship, but it, for the most part, is straight minus a few things, and I've asked her personally, like, do you see me differently? Because obviously sex is different, because she's mainly been with men, like cis men and like a few women and stuff. And she said, honestly, I don't think about that in sexual spaces. She's like, I think about, I'm having a good time with you. This is my boyfriend. And yes, things are different, but she goes, at least I'm getting off. So.
Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying, bro.
W in the chat.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with pretty much every last thing that you've said. Like, especially when you said that you would have not been in a relationship in the beginning phases, dude. Absolutely, that's one thing.
Yeah.
It's not to say, like, there were parts of my last relationship that I did enjoy. A lot of it was really rough. It caused a lot of damage. And I'm grateful for the things I learned and all that. I can't change the past, but man, if I could go back, I think I would have taken that time for myself. I think when you're in a relationship and you're in the beginning phases of your whole transition, this whole crazy thing that you're changing in your life, it's really hard to do that part alongside another person. You are discovering who you are. So how do you even know what you have to offer to this other person? You really don't. Like, you're learning yourself, and you're changing. Not that you're changing everything about yourself, but it's the first time in life where you're actually getting to be fully authentic, and you discover a lot of things about yourself in that. And it's really hard to do that in a relationship. But
and that's not to
go ahead. No, you're good.
That's not to say that there aren't couples that do make it. I've seen plenty of them that do. But, if you're not in a relationship and you're in the beginnings of your transition, I would suggest not doing it, just because it is focusing that energy on loving yourself and loving the beautiful things that are happening to you and being excited about those things. And it sucks when you have a partner that's not as excited as you are.
I think a lot of that too has to do with the other person and their preferences when it comes to dating. So, like, how do you really know what to discuss on their preferences if you're not even sure where you're headed in this, transition journey, whatever? Like, say that you don't even know that you're trans yet, and you're with a person and you're in like a hetero relationship, and then you start transitioning. Like, you've never known to discuss with them if they would be interested in the opposite sex, because you haven't reached that point yet. And so now you're at that point and they're like, I don't really know that I want to be with a woman. Like, I'm not a lesbian, I'm not bi, I'm not any of those things. Like, I don't want to be with a woman. And now you've been presented with this issue. And like, even if y'all have been together for years and years, like, I feel like it's fair for both sides to get to live their truth and do whatever makes them the most happy, even if it's apart. And that sucks, but like, yeah, it just makes it so much better or easier to avoid that altogether and not subject either party to a situation that could be extremely hurtful, because it sucks to lose somebody you love, especially when it's just over something as like what seems as minor as not being attracted to the opposite sex or whatever the case is. Like that could seem very minor in some people's eyes, and some people would look at it and be like, oh, you transphobe, like you're a POS for that.
Right.
But
layers.
It really, again, back to, preference. Like some people have preferences and some people cannot get past those preferences. Some people are not open to breaking their boundaries or their standards or whatever they have going on, and that's totally fair. That's totally okay.
I will say that at this point in my relationship, in my transition, being in a relationship has been fantastic. However, I think a lot of that has to do with being with the right person, and somebody who actually respects you. So on that end of things, like after you've taken your time and you've gone through things and you know what you want and all of those, like I think it's great to get out there and find a person that works with you, because there is that kind of like we were talking about earlier, like getting to feel like a man because of the person you're with. Like it's not always me having to affirm me. Like sometimes it's just happening without her even knowing that she's doing it, and it offers this peace. This I can just relax. I don't have to think about it too hard, and it's nice to have that too. So I guess my advice would just be take it slow, date around, don't settle, and find the right person, find out what you want in a person. And this is like trans, not trans, it doesn't even matter. Like just, be careful with who you're choosing, and set your boundaries, and make sure you're choosing a person who's going to always make you feel like because that's, I think, very similar in both of our experiences, Cadyn, is that we weren't made to feel that way. At all. Very, very opposite.
It definitely, in previous relationships, I've been the trans boyfriend. Like that adjective came with it, and it's like at this point in my transition, that's all it is for me. It's just a descriptor more so than my entire life. Of course, when I first came out, like I was like, hell yeah, like, and even when Braxton and I came out, because Braxton came out a little bit before I did. But it wasn't really it wasn't talked about. It wasn't met with kindness and stuff like you see now, and so I did a lot of activism because I wanted people to have, I wanted people to know and have resources and whatever. And, now being this far into it, I'm like, that's just a descriptor. There's so much more to me than just being trans. And that's where like some people in relationships and stuff can't get over that. And that's fine. That's just their preference. And we move on and we find somebody better,
Yep.
I really like that advice that you gave, because it resonates to me, like as far as the wait, to date when you're early in. Yeah. I mean, because with me being a year in, like I'd love to like put myself out in the dating world, but now that I actually process what you said, I don't actually think it would be best for me. Yeah. Waiting, I think, at least for me, maybe another 6 months to another year would probably be best.
Yeah, I get like wanting to have a person there. I mean, the little blip of time that I was single between my last relationship and my current, it got very lonely very quick. So that part's not lost on me, but I think it's just such a good opportunity. Even when you're experiencing that loneliness, it presents the opportunity for you to get to show up for yourself. When I was single, I was taking myself on dates, and complimenting myself or buying myself gifts, or, doing that. In that, I learned like, this is what I expect out of a person, and I'm not going to take any less, because this is what I deserve, and it also simultaneously built a relationship with myself. Like I have a lot of self-love now because I took that time to be alone, and I didn't just settle and jump in. Even though I was so lonely, I learned how to approach that loneliness and take care of that issue myself.
It's definitely, self-love is so important. And you don't have to be 100%, but also like being able to, when you have self-worth and you love who you are, you're not going to settle for less than what you deserve. And that was the key takeaway of like me leaving my marriage was, I settled for less than what I deserved for so long because I had no self-worth. And that was because I was looking for that validation within relationships and not giving that validation to myself. So that's another one, whether you're trans or not, like putting that energy into loving yourself you will not regret doing that because you won't settle for anything less.
Absolutely. I wanted to get into the next little question here. I guess it kind of has a follow-up question, because I'm just like curious, and I think people would be interested to know like about these two things here. So as far as like letting friends, family know about like who you're dating, etc., how has that been? Have you had any like relationship changes within friends and family and things like that within dating?
I think this one's a really good one to hand over to Maddie, just because of my introduction to your parents, and how that went down. Because it ends happy, but it started off interesting.
Yeah, my parents are from small town Texas. My dad is a pastor. My dad is a very interesting person, and he is pretty lax about most things, but some things, like every once in a while, you'll catch him on a bad day. And I was with a cis white man for 2 years before I met Braxton. It was not good. It was abusive. And I think that I hid all of the like really bad stuff from my dad, and I just let him in on the like, basic like normal relationship tiffys and shit. And so he knew that like things weren't perfect, but he didn't know that things were awful. And he also knew that this man made a lot of money and had Braxton a lot of good connections and like he was just very, very established. He was also 10 years older than me, but that's neither here nor there. And so my dad was really upset when we split up, and part of that's because I was upset, and then the other half of that was because he thought that I had made it in life finally, and I didn't. And so whenever I brought Braxton home, he has neck tattoos and he makes music, and my dad was a musician.
Used to be a chick.
My dad was a musician when I was growing up, and he pursued being a famous musician, and it did not go well at all, and he ended up having to give up his dream to raise kids, and like my mother was not good, and so he had to put a lot of his life and a lot of his wants on the line to make shit happen. And so when he heard that he was trans and he was a musician and all of these things, my dad was like, red flag, red flag, red flag. So he was not happy about my choices at the beginning, but he just had to let him. I mean, they had conversations after that. I had a conversation with him. We didn't talk for
a year,
at least over a year, because I told him that you aren't going to disrespect somebody based off of information that you have that isn't much. Like, you're not even the full tip of the iceberg aware, and you think that you have the full iceberg, and we're not going to do that. So whenever you are open and willing to receive the information that you need in order to understand this person and this situation, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to entertain you. And I mean, a year or so later, he decided that he wanted to be a part of things. And so I opened up to him. He got sober. My dad was also an alcoholic, so that fueled a lot of things. But he got sober and his whole mindset changed. I mean, he was clear for the first time in a decade. So that changed a lot in itself. But they have a fantastic relationship now. And I never thought that it would be be like where it is. I knew that my dad would get over himself and he would be tolerant eventually, but I didn't know that they would become so close. So that's been really fun for me because I do love my dad, even though he's kind of a dingus. Like, he made me. I am also a dingus, but
yes.
I don't know. That was an interesting time.
It's cool because it came a long way. You're really like this. I think it was either the last time or the time before that we were visiting them, and he'd kind of pulled me to the side and just told me that he was very grateful to have me around and that I had taught him a lot, and he had learned how to kind of rein things in before he went for him, and just my presence being around has been beneficial for him. And so it's really cool that we finally got to that point because, man, when it started, I was scared. I was like, this is what I'm not giving this up. So this is what I have to deal with for the rest of my life. Like, that kind of sucks, So I am glad that it got to where it was. And honestly, like it just came from giving them time. It's kind of like what we talked about on the Mother's Day special. Like, you've got to offer that grace, and that's to anybody. It doesn't matter who it is, and it goes a really long way. It goes such a long way. It really makes a difference.
Also like to add that A lot of that too was because I went from like the jump down your throat activist mindset about it to a gentle parenting mindset about it. And I was just kind of like, okay, sweetheart, if that's what we're going to do, then you're going to go do something else for a little bit. And then we're just not going to do this. Because at first I was very like, this is how you need to feel about it. And this is how you're going to feel about it, period. And that was not received at all. Like, yep. My dad is very stubborn. I mean, a lot of people, when you tell them to forget everything they've ever known, that's not going to be received well. Nope. So especially when it comes to their children and the well-being of their children and who their children are involved with, like, parents are really hard when it comes to stuff like that. But I think that a lot of it is how you approach it. Because if you come at it from just already like high strung and upset and angry and I need to make a change, I'm doing this work right now, like that's not going to get the response that you want. You have to provide a bare minimum level of information, and then if they have questions, they will ask them and they will push and they will prod. You can't just dump information on someone and then expect them to understand everything. You kind of just have to give them one little tidbit, and then they will ask questions. My parents are always asking questions. Yeah. They're always wanting to know more and understand more. But I think that the relationship that we have now is because we've allowed them that space to learn at their own pace and not try to shove a bunch of information down someone's throat. Because especially coming from small town Bible Belt, Texas, transgender is taboo as fuck. Like nobody wants to talk about that. They're okay with it. Just keep it away from them. Like, so if you present those things to someone in a gentle way, they're much more likely to be like, okay, fuck yeah, cool. Like I'm on board. But I think a lot of people just like want to force people into this mindset of like, this is okay. Like it is okay and it should be okay, but you can't expect every person to be on board immediately. So
my family was just surprised that she was so pretty. They're like, damn, bro. Go off.
Thanks for sharing that, though. I mean, that's really awesome to hear about the progression. And you are right. I mean, I live in a small town in Texas. Like being trans is like unheard of, especially in a small town. And
unacceptable.
And the thing is that you have to give grace, because I mean, how do we expect people to change if we are shoving that information like, yes, you have to, this is how it should be, et cetera, et cetera. How could we expect someone's view on it to change correctly without doing that? So
right.
Cadyn, what about you? Do you have like any experiences or anything on your end?
So my father, when I initially came out, he was not super cool with it. It's taken him a long time to be cool with everything, and he's still not 100%. I don't think he ever will be, and I've accepted that. He'll tell you that he's a true blood redneck American. He'll tell you that himself. But him and my stepmom have, over the past several years they've come a long way. And when I got married to Gavin, I just name dropped my ex-husband. Oops. It doesn't matter. When I married my ex-husband, I invited my father to the wedding, and he came. And I thought he was going to be upset because my ex was Hispanic, covered in tattoos, and also trans. But he came and he was cool, and he was more shocked that we were married by a drag queen. He was like, "That's a man, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, Dad." He's like, "Okay." Like and there was a bunch of queer people at my wedding, and so that was a whole new experience for him. But he was really cool about it. Later on, when I was leaving my ex-husband, he was very supportive, and honestly, like, he told me the red flags that he saw, and they had nothing to do with like him being trans or me being trans or anything like that. They had to do with genuinely like who he was as a person and the way he made my father and my stepmom uncomfortable. Right. But as far as like my current partner, so her family doesn't know. And the thing is, you could Google me and you'd know, because I did activism. Right. But they don't know. And that is something that we're honestly kind of terrified about. And I've had to have a conversation with her of, don't tell people without like asking me, you know, because I don't feel like it's anybody's business unless they're my doctor or they're sleeping with me, because I don't. I want that to be my information to share whenever I'm comfortable, you know, and she's been really good about that. I'm very receptive to that, and I was like, it's not because like I don't trust your judgment. It's more so of like you tell this person and then they tell this person, and the next thing I know, I've lost my privilege of being stealth, and I'm no longer just Cadyn. I'm Cadyn. Let's ask a bunch of intrusive questions at work. You know, so it's kind of a terrifying thought of when her family does inevitably find out, because they will, you know, and that is a scary conversation because they do love me. They ask about me when they talk to her, and they knew I was married to a man too, and they're surprisingly like, that's just, we don't talk about it. I've definitely, well, and then like the first person I ever dated, like that their parents kind of knew, was actually one of Braxton's best friends, and her mom was actually super cool with it, and the rules changed.
I know who we're talking about. Yes.
And like the rules changed at the house. I was no longer allowed to sleep upstairs with her anymore. She's like, well, since you're her boyfriend, you have to sleep downstairs now. And I was like, but I was allowed to sleep upstairs before. She's like, nope, you're a boy now, so you got to sleep downstairs. And that was really affirming and cool, you know. So I've definitely had really positive interactions with parents and relationships. You know, and having a positive relationship with my own family now is cool. Not so much on my mother's side, but that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, whole episode of its own.
God.
You know, I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, because, you know, I feel like because you've established like a relationship first with them, when they do find out, you know, maybe that will go over a lot better because they've seen you for you, not you for being trans.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hopeful for, but I also am afraid that their big thing that they're going to be upset about is that they're going to feel like they were deceived. One of the big things they talk about is how important it is to them to be honest and transparent, and that they don't like being deceived. And that, like, hearing that, just like, I'm like, man, like, you know, and I know that their perception of trans people is not positive, unfortunately. And I would hope that I've made enough of an impact that they would, but I also think about it from the other end of things, of them not being okay and them being very upset. And I'm preparing for both. You know, I haven't had too many partners that their parents would have freaked out. This is kind of a new territory for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, hopefully hearing things from our side, like, at least helps alleviate some of the worry, because even if it does go poorly initially, depending on the reactions on your end of things, it could turn around, you know. And I think it might be a little jarring for them at first, but I think knowing who you are, it might take them a little time. But I think if they have that time without someone like just jumping down their throat because you're an asshole because you just didn't immediately accept me, I think if they have that space, I really don't see them not coming around. Like, they already have a relationship with you, they know who you are, so I think it'll, even if it's not initial, I think it'll play out.
My parents' negative view on trans people was due to the trans people we all know.
The poor representation.
The loudest in the room, the most obnoxious in the room, the brightest. So my parents got to see people like that who were essentially out in public making a mockery of an entire group of people. And so they had this preconceived idea of who he was as a person based off of this one single trait. So I think that the fact that they do know you, like they were saying, like that already, they're not just picturing you as this crazy trans person, like they're picturing you as Cadyn. And then they also get to know. And I think too, when you have the conversation, you should say, like, I think it should be you, one, and two, I think you should speak on, like, I didn't want to be deceiving to y'all, but like this is a big thing, and I know that y'all don't feel positively about this, and I didn't want you to, you know, be mad at your daughter. I didn't want you to be mad at me and, you know, have any like ill will, because I know that this is important to her too. And like, I love her, she loves me, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that like, they had never met him before. They had seen pictures on Facebook. And so that was the idea that they got of him. And so that was detrimental to the situation. What I thought was funny is my dad is a shithead, and I can say that now because we're friends, but he snitched on me to my grandmother in hopes that she was going to be a shithead about it too. And she surprisingly was only upset that I didn't tell her. She reached out to me and she was like, I can't believe you didn't tell me. And I was like, well, I didn't know. You told me one time that if any of us were gay, you'd disown us. And she said, I never expected any of you to be like different, so I obviously was just speaking out of my ass. I love you. Like, you could kill somebody and I would not stop loving you. Like, I would put money on your books and call you every day. I was like, well, okay, cool. And so she was mad at my parents for telling her before I got to tell her, and I thought that was funny.
It was precious. It was very precious.
And she's in her 70s, and she doesn't even, I mean, that woman is crazy, and she'll forget. And she'll call me and be like, do I call him him? And I'm like, yes, ma'am. She's like, okay. And that's it. Period. Done. Over. She just forgets. Okay. She's in her almost 80 years old. So she's allowed to forget. But she's respectful. She's not shitty towards him. She's never been shitty towards him. My granddad just doesn't really talk nicely to anyone. So that's good. But that whole situation at the beginning was really, really tough. You just have to keep an open mind about it and keep hope in your heart for them. You can't just write them off as soon as they're upset about it, because then they put the ball back in your court and you threw it in the trash at that point. So
it's definitely like something that Emily and I have talked about, you know, all the possibilities, all the scenarios, what we would do, etc.
Sure.
Right. So it's something I'm prepared for. I've also had, like, we were talking about like people forgetting. I've had that on the opposite of event though. Like one of my good friends, when I started dating Emily, she was like, "Aren't you worried about getting her pregnant?" And I was like, "No."
Excuse me?
No. Because this girl's known me since high school, and she's like, "Oh, I forget." And I'm like, "Thank you. I would like you to continue to forget."
I know, my favorite thing. Oh, I love
Please
that.
keep forgetting.
I love that shit.
That's awesome. That definitely has to be affirming, no doubt. But I kind of wanted to talk about something that you mentioned there, because and this is just in general. I don't know. I think like when people say like, oh, you know, like they feel lied to because they don't know you're trans or whatever. That kind of upsets me, because it's like, that is such a personal thing that I feel like it's that trans person's decision to say that.
Absolutely.
Like you mentioned, doctor's visits, the person you're sleeping with, those are the only people who have the immediate given right to know.
Yeah, it's selfish to assume that, or to think that you have any right to that information. Like, that's so selfish. It has nothing to do with you. It shouldn't change anything. Most of the time it doesn't change anything. So it's like, that's selfish. There's no reason for that.
Yeah, and the only reason why people want to know is because they feel like they're entitled to it with a trans person.
Right.
But, you know, they're not out here coming up to, you know, cis men and be like, "How big's your penis?" Or coming up to cis women and be like, "How big are your tits?" You know, they're not doing that. But, you know, with trans people, they're like, "So have you had the surgery?" And I'm like, "Have I had my appendix out? No. I haven't. I still got that." You know, I just that's the part that always like is a trip for me, is like when someone does find out, it doesn't take very long for them to either get creepy or ask really invasive stuff. And my thing is like, I'm cool with answering a lot of stuff, but it just gets tiring after a while, you know, like Google exists, like chill.
Yeah, that's why I just rather people don't know, because it always as soon as that comes out, the conversation always pivots to, now we're just talking about trans stuff. And I know people online would probably believe that I love talking about trans stuff, and for the most part, like, yeah, sure, like, I don't mind having the conversations about it, but I don't like for it to be my entire life. Like, I do the podcasts and those things so that, you know, I can educate, because I have a voice in this ring, and so it's like, of course I want to use it, but not all the time, you know, definitely not all the time. Like, pretty restricted to this, like, that's it. I'm good outside of this. I get enough here, so I don't want this to be what I talk about all the time, and almost always it completely shifts gears, and that's all we're talking about for the next 2 hours, and I don't want to do that.
I don't want to come home and talk about work the same way I don't want to go to work and talk about home. I don't want to discuss those things with just everybody all the time, especially strangers. Like, if you paved the way for that conversation, and you talking to my parents is a lot different than you talking to an old man at your shop. Like,
correct.
That is a completely because my parents want to understand so that they can understand you better and build better rapport with you, because
we're directly involved.
We're getting married, so that's that is a reason to want to build rapport and build a relationship with someone. But the old man at your job, he just wants to know because he's fucking nosy and he has nothing better to do with his life than ask a stranger what's in their pants.
Yes.
And that's weird. You have no right to that information. You have no right to any of that. Like, you're not going to come, like you said, you're not going to walk in and ask me how big my chest is, or ask me what size pants I wear, or if the carpets match the drapes. Like, that's fucked up. You can't say shit like that to people. So you have to also carry that over to people who have a different setup than us. Like, you can't just ask them what their shit is. Like, that's so
I mean, of course you have people who are like, don't know social cues and definitely ask wild shit like that, you know, like, but for the most part, most of us are not going to come up to somebody that's different and ask them how they have sex or what they're doing. Like, you're not going to walk up to somebody who's disabled and be like, yo, do you fuck? Like, that's weird. Why would you do that?
I'm not going to ask a man in a wheelchair if he can still perform sexually. Like, the same way I'm not going to ask a trans man if he can still perform sexually. Like, that's
exactly, like,
it's not different.
No. You know, and I've had definitely, you know, cis men especially, they're always like, do you have a dick? And I'm like, that's kind of a subjective answer, you know, like, in yes, but no. Like,
I do own one.
It's like, you know, I make the joke of like, I'm a Build-A-Bear. Like, you can pick any size, shape, or color you want. Like, that's cool. But, you know, why does it matter? Like, you know, and I hit one of my friends recently, like, with it, like, he found out and, you know, he was cool about it, whatever. And then he's like, so if you were to get one, like, how big would you get? And I was like, how big's yours? And he was like, that's weird, man. I was like, well,
crazy
how that feels, huh?
Oh, how the tables
turn.
Yeah.
You know, I actually like how, you know, y'all kind of got into the conversation of, you know, like, limits with the trans thing too, because like I'm the same way. I don't really talk about the trans stuff outside of this podcast. I really don't, because like I do want to get to like a stealth level per se as well. I don't want people, like, I'm not one of those people out there like who has like a trans flag sticker on the back of my car or something that lets you know I'm trans. I don't own any of that. I don't want any of it. Because it's a dead giveaway, and I'm just not that type of person. I do want to just live my life as any woman would, and that's that.
Yep. No, I definitely agree.
Yeah, like I said, in the beginnings of my transition, of course, like, I was, you know, out and proud and, you know, going out and buying trans flags and stuff and like wearing shirts and stuff. But like now, and I feel like back then it was different, you know, it was more of like finding others and being able to like indicate each other and finding that sense of community. But now it's like a target is what it feels like, you know, and I don't
made it a target. Our community made it the target. That's the crazy part about that.
Like, you would not catch me dead in a trans colored anything now. The only thing I have is like, I have a patch jacket that says like protect trans people, and that's it. And that's just because I'm stealth passing enough that like I get to use that as a privilege too. If somebody asks about it, I get to, you know, have a cis standpoint, you know, and that's where like I use that to have educated conversations about trans people, because it's weird how often it comes up, and not at the hands of myself, to be able to have a conversation with somebody in a healthy way without outing myself.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like now, like you wouldn't catch me dead with it. Not because like I'm not proud of who I am, but because I don't want to be a target, and I don't want to attract the kind of people that I don't want to attract, you know, whether that's like, and that's like in regards of like community or friendship or whatever, you know, I I don't want to solely be friends with someone just because they're also trans. I want to be friends with people because we have other things in common.
Right.
Right. That's very true. I think also, like, Braxton, you said it too, is that like it's our own community that is placing the target, because like bathroom discussions have become a big thing now. I feel like people are watching bathrooms now to see, like, is a trans person going in, because there's so much now of like, I mean, I definitely, I don't, tell me if I'm wrong here, but or at least from what I see, it's more media focused, with like trans women in bathrooms and stuff. I don't know if it's the same end on like the trans man side of things,
Nope.
but it's like I'm super scared every time I have to go into a restroom, and that sucks.
Yeah.
It really does. But I think a lot of that is because like trans people, like a certain side of trans people, has made that harder because people are looking, because of the Planet Fitness thing. Like, oh, do I have a trans person in here with me? They're looking at people more. Like it's just something that's happening, and it sucks because it's scary to walk in those places.
Yeah, I mean, it's, a little off of the relationship topic, but I mean, a lot of that's because we didn't gatekeep. A lot of that's because we the things we've talked about prior to this, like we've just allowed anybody can be trans, anybody can do this. And so now we see this uprising of men using women's spaces and doing crazy things because they have to be, they said they're trans, so they are. Yep. And it's crazy that like we still claim those people. Like my whole argument on it is that the bathroom is like trans women, actual trans women are not the issue in a bathroom or in your space or whatever. It's the people that have caught wind that, oh, well, this community is going to let anybody in. They're going to let anybody do whatever. So I'm just going to hop on the train and do what I want to do because now I know I can get away with it. And it's just sad. It's sad. And a lot of it is, like you said, the trans men, it's not an issue for us. Nobody cares. Dudes do not care that we are in their bathroom. They really don't. Even if they can clock me, like, I'm not a threat. No. I'm clearly not a threat to them, so they don't care. And it just makes me feel really sad for, my friends that are trans women. Obviously, you and I've gotten very close, and it really sucks to think that you have to be afraid to go to the bathroom. Like, that's such a simple human thing that we have to do. And it's crazy to be made to be afraid of that space when you're just going to relieve yourself. Like, that's so sad. It sucks.
This is definitely a topic Braxton and I have talked about for hours before, of like trans women have it so much harder in other aspects of transitioning, and that being one of them. It's just like a lot of the bills and stuff that are being pushed are not aimed at trans men. It's an aim at trans women, and that's like scary to think about, because like when they talk about passing these bathroom bills and stuff, it's like y'all are not thinking about trans men. And if you want to force me into a woman's space, I'm going to make women uncomfortable. And I don't want to do that. At the end of the day, I don't want to make women uncomfortable at all.
Because I can promise you that, say, Alyssa walked into the bathroom next to me, I'm like, cool, a girl, I'm going to pee. I'm not even thinking about who you are. I'm not looking at you because I'm trying to avoid looking at anyone while I'm in the bathroom, because that's weird. But if Cadyn walked into the bathroom with me, I would be like, are you... No, get out. Security would be getting called. I'd be Karen. So when we do these, like, I hate the, like, pass to piss or whatever, like, but when you are obviously making an attempt at looking a certain way, I think that can be recognized just in itself. Like the trans person, quote unquote, that was in the restroom at the Planet Fitness, we've seen the pictures, like that was a man. And I'm not trying to disrespect their identity or whatever, maybe they do identify as a trans woman. That's wonderful. But the problem is you're in specifically an area that is designated for people to get nude, and you are a male in that area. Like, if this was just a bathroom and you had just come in to pee real quick and leave, like, maybe nobody would even see you. But the fact that you're standing at a mirror, you're shaving, you're like, undressing, you're doing all of these, you're drawing attention to yourself, and you are very obviously like, one of these things does not belong here. And that's not anything against you personally. That has everything to do with the people around you. And like, the same way you're not going to go in public and scream at the top of your lungs because that's disrespectful to those around you. You're not going to go into a women's bathroom looking like a male and then get mad at the women who say that they're uncomfortable with that taking place. Like, that's not okay. But I think that a lot of like trans women who otherwise wouldn't be a problem and have been using the women's spaces for years and years, like now, like you said, Alyssa, they're being targeted because maybe there is something. I mean, cis women who look slightly masculine are being targeted. Cis women with, you know, PCOS and facial hair and things that go on that just happen naturally because of fucking testosterone and shit in your body, they're being targeted and they're being told that they can't use those spaces, and they're being asked for identifying factors that prove that they are biologically female. Like, that's crazy. This has gotten to a point where people are just far too focused on what's going on situation per situation, when it should just be like, if you see someone who looks like Cadyn in the women's restroom, say something. But otherwise, piss and go on about your fucking business and make sure you wash your hands. Like, I don't know. It has to be like that.
I mean, there's definitely like men's heavy spaces that I'm not going to go to. Like, you're not going to catch me showering at the gym. Like, I'm not going to shower at the gym because gym. What?
I said, you won't catch me showering at the gym.
Yeah. And it's because like, I don't feel safe doing that for myself, because if, you know, sorry, but I would choose the bear, you know, like I don't feel safe in a locker room with a bunch of dudes. I don't. That's scary. Trans or not. No. Yeah. You know, some of these dudes are going to think, oh, I'm going to take advantage of this person, and I'm good. I'm not going to do that to myself. And that's where it comes down to also common sense of like, know your surroundings, know what you're, you know, be aware of the people around you, you know. Think of yourself at risk there, you know, not just, you know, a lot of people's argument is like, well, I don't want to make myself uncomfortable. Okay, but like, I would rather make myself uncomfortable than to make a bunch of women uncomfortable, you know, or, you know, if for some, like, men don't care. It's like Braxton said, men don't care. Like, if I get clocked, which is a very rare occasion now, men do not care. Most of the time, they're disgusting, and the men's bathroom is nasty. I don't know why anybody would want to go in there anyway.
They don't even want to go in there. They don't give a fuck that you're in there.
No, they're already pissing on the floor, so who cares?
And the wall.
Yes.
You know, the crazy thing about like the Planet Fitness situation, because we were talking about it, is that person was not trying. Second of all, as a trans woman, like, shaving is a very private thing. I don't want people to have to know that I have to shave my face.
Right.
So to do that in public, it's weird. Crazy. And like, not even that, like, being vulnerable by being nude in those places is another thing. Like, I don't want anybody to see my body. I don't like, you know, where I'm at in my transition currently. So it's like, you know, to think that I would put myself in that is crazy, and to watch them do it, and then people be like, oh, well, you know, they're trans, so this, that. No, like, as a trans woman, I'm saying that's not cool. Yeah. If I shave my face, I'm doing it in like private in my home.
Yep.
I'm taking care of everything I need to take care of. Don't get me like, I'm not the most passing trans woman out there. I'm aware of that, but at least I put effort in. I do my best. You know, I try to do enough to assimilate in society and get seen, which I haven't really had any issues. Yeah. But I am actually putting in effort. You know, if I want to go use a women's restroom, like, I should be able to. But yeah, it's a whole thing.
That's crazy. We got way off topic. But it's important shit.
It really is, absolutely. Well, I guess, is there like any like closing notes or advice that you would give to just trans or not, just like anyone who's looking for your relationship or in a relationship, maybe going through struggles? You know, what are some like advice that you can put out there that has like kind of helped you through your current dating?
Yeah. One thing I didn't really like touch on a whole lot yet is that, you know, I think a lot of the reason that I stayed in a shitty relationship for so long was because I was so afraid as a trans man that I was never going to find another cis woman, which is, you know, my preference. I just didn't think that I was ever going to find a cis woman that wanted what I had to offer, was going to love me the same way, or see me as a man, or whatever it might have been. There's just a lot of insecurities around it, and I think that that's probably like a universal feeling amongst trans people in general, because, you know, we are trying to assimilate, even though we are not biologically this thing. My advice would be to try your best to silence those thoughts, because they are wrong. They are so very wrong. That is your fear taking hold of you, because at this point in my life, I have an amazing woman in my life who is a cis woman. It makes me feel like more of a man than probably any other person ever has in my entire life. And we're very happy, you know, and we have built a whole life together, and we've done a lot of crazy shit, and it's it's possible, you know. You just have to take that time to work on you, and set your boundaries and know what you want, and honestly, don't treat it as anything different than it's just two people in a relationship. There is no, well, because I'm a trans man, it's different. No, you just, you know, operate your relationship the way it operates, communicate with each other, love each other, all of the same stuff that anybody else does, and you'll be happy, you know, and drown out the outside noise, because a lot of people will have a lot of things to say, and probably not support it, but we're happier than we've ever been with any person. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, I think that we're both pretty happy with where we're at. So, you know, it can happen, and don't lose hope in it just because of things you might be insecure about or afraid of. You know, don't give up on it.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I guess like my final notes, you know, one, like I said earlier, really investing in yourself, and this, trans or not, really investing into yourself and what you want and what you expect from a partner. And you know, as a person who has a PhD in clownery, because I thought red flags would lead me to the circus, but really they make you a clown. You know, red flags do not lead you to the circus. Okay, if somebody gives you that red flag, you believe that. A big thing is don't let down your boundaries and your expectations for somebody because of you're afraid that someone's not going to love you enough or whatever. Because if someone loved you, they wouldn't break those boundaries. They wouldn't put you in a situation where you'd have to think those things. And that's not to say that relationships don't have up and downs. They do. But if it's always down, you gotta go. And you know, another big thing is just communication is so huge. And I know everybody says that, you know, trust, communication, but you won't have trust without communication. And really meeting your partner with empathy, or partners if you're polyamorous, done that too. You know, just trust and empathy and communication, and really having passionate confrontation. Couples are going to argue, they're going to fight, you're going to have disagreements, you're not always going to like each other. Sometimes you're going to be annoyed, but that's okay. You have to choose to love someone. And what I say by choosing to love someone, it's, you know, you may not want to rub their back that day at all, but you know that is their favorite thing in the whole world, so you're going to do it because you're choosing to love them, you know, and you want somebody to choose to love you too.
Correct.
And that would be my taking piece when it comes to dating, just in general, not just trans.
I would say preferences are not to be taken personally. If somebody has preferences that has nothing to do with you, even if they make it feel like it does, it literally does not. You can't help what you have. You can't help what you offer. So that should not be taken so deeply. But if somebody doesn't like you, that's okay. Good. Move on. Next. I'm going to find somebody who does. Somebody telling you straight up that they don't want you, that they're not into what you got going on. That's a good thing. Consider that a blessing, because they just saved you a lot of time that some people will not give you the courtesy of doing. So just, you know, be great.
There are hotter people out there anyway.
Period.
Really solid advice, honestly. Thank all of you for your advice and for sharing these things. You know, I know that these are personal things, you know, when you're talking about dating and things like that, it can definitely get personal. I definitely appreciate, you know, everyone here for being open and sharing that, because I think it's important for people to hear. So definitely thank you. Cadyn, thank you for coming on the podcast. Maddie, you as well. It was really awesome to have y'all on. It was very, very exciting. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Absolutely. It was great.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you guys.
Oh God, Martin, you went the whole time.
Martin.
I love that boy.
Yeah, I think we went over a lot of really good things. Hopefully, everyone watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, hopefully you really enjoyed it. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell, that whole thing. And then if you're listening on Spotify, feel free to rate the show. There is a rate button. You could give it, however you want. But we really appreciate you listening. And definitely stay tuned for the next one. And I appreciate it all. And everyone have a great night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.